and she'll never forget what she saw.
The sky was very orange in fire. I don't know what happened, but the noise above.
The attack killed at least 35 people and injured more than 100. That facility, less than 25 miles from the border of NATO member Poland, has served as a crucial hub for cooperation between Ukraine and the NATO countries supporting it in its defense against Moscow's grinding assault. While much of the war has taken place in the east and south, local mayor says the war is now officially in their backyard.
My citizens are afraid, and I believe they will flee out of the country.
The base has long been used to train Ukrainian military personnel, often with instructors from the U.S. and other countries in the Western Alliance. Poland is also the transit route for Western military aid to Ukraine. The strikes follow Moscow's threats to target those shipments. As the invasion runs into its third week, the northwest city of Lviv has largely been spared from Russia's relentless bombardment. The picturesque city has instead become ground zero for displaced Ukrainians. Hundreds of thousands of them have flooded into the city in search of relative safety, with many using it as a stopping point before making their way to the Polish border. One of those refugees is Tatiana. She's fleeing with her 10 children and is hopeful they'll see better days.
I believe that everything will be okay, and that this nightmare will end, and my children will have a bright future.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spent the morning visiting a hospital filled with wounded soldiers. He says the key task right now is to get the humanitarian convoy that is traveling towards the besieged city of Mariupol to its destination. The city has been under siege for more than a week. Most citizens do not have power or water.
And the latest numbers are in from the United Nations. Over 2.6 million Ukrainians have fled the country as refugees. The latest estimate is that that number will ultimately climb to 4 million. Rudabeh?
We're joined now by Philip Crowther to provide us more updates from Lviv tonight. Philip, welcome. And the war now getting dangerously close to another country, Poland. 35 people killed in that Russian airstrike of the military training base. What are the implications of that?
Well, it's provocative, certainly, towards Poland. Might not have been meant that way, but what it shows, certainly, is that Russia is willing to move this war westwards to areas like where I am here in Lviv that were considered by pretty much everybody safe until now, a place where a lot of refugees have been passing through. That has now changed with that attack yesterday on that military base. One of the reasons why it was attacked is it was a training base in the past. There was training there between the Ukrainian army and NATO, also between US forces from the Florida National Guard, for example, were training their Ukrainian colleagues. So maybe it symbolized, in a sense, exactly what Vladimir Putin hates about what NATO is doing, is it's getting closer to Russia, and countries that used to be in the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union are moving toward NATO. But it's an escalation. It's a serious escalation, this one, and it means that the risks of other countries getting involved in this war has gone up a notch.
Yeah, and what is the reaction in Lviv to these attacks in the western part of the country, relatively close to where you are?
Yeah, people are worried here, of course, because this was supposed to be a safe passage place for refugees, and has been. 2.5 million, remember. 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine during this war that's only in its 18th day now. Lviv also is a very important place for humanitarian aid to make its way into Ukraine, but it is also an important place for weapons shipments, and that is one of the reasons you would think why this attack took place last night. The Russian government had said relatively clearly that attacks on weapon shipments would be fair game, essentially, during this war. But let me get back to Lviv and the reaction here. Of course, people are more nervous. The people I've spoken to today in the town center, without even being prompted about this, said that they were worried because the war had come a lot closer to their home now. It's, first of all, just around 30 kilometers away from where we are here in Lviv, where that attack took place. over 30 Russian missiles landed there, but it's only 15 kilometers from the Polish border. Those explosions yesterday, they were heard and felt in Poland, a NATO member country and a member of the European Union.
Wow, and you think about the implications of that, it's very serious. And 7 civilians, including a child, also reportedly died when a Russian shell hit a humanitarian convoy of refugees, and it forced them to turn back. But at the same time, Zelensky is saying nearly 125,000 civilians have been evacuated, as you just mentioned, through those humanitarian corridors you were talking about. And a convoy of humanitarian aid is headed to Mariupol, which is a place that we've been talking a lot about and we know is in dire need of supplies right now. Is that a sign for hope?
Difficult to get an update, to be honest, on the situation in Mariupol. We know that that humanitarian convoy was heading in, that there was hope that it would make its way in. We don't have confirmation of that at this point, and certainly there was no plan to get civilians out in the other direction. Essentially, the city of Mariupol, the besieged city in the southeast of the country, there have been attempts for humanitarian corridors for a week now, and none of them have worked out. There have also been attempts at ceasefires, agreements between Ukraine and Russia that there should be ceasefires and also safe passage for civilians out of Mariupol. That hasn't happened a single time. Now that number, that high number of people who made it out of these besieged areas, those are other areas of the country. Some of these safe passages have worked, but as you mentioned in your example right there, there is always that risk that might fire on civilians who are trying to escape.
Philip Crowther in Ukraine, thank you. And that overnight airstrike in western Ukraine was
Друзья, что происходит на американском телевидении? Рассказывают всю правду о происходящем на Украине, в Украине. На той войне, которая развязал Путло. Я вот просто сейчас на трекстапе обычном и посмотрел телевидение. Что рассказывает там на рашенском телевидении, я представляю, пропаганда. А вот на американском телевидении все показывают как есть. Про бомбежки Мариуполя, про беженцев и про все правда. Все, пожалуйста, вот сутками идет программы и новостные новости на американском телевидении про Украину. Круглые сутки. Так что нет войне, слава Украине. Такие дела.